I do not recommend this. But if you deprive yourself of sleep long enough, truly long enough, say 72 hours or more, at some point you will start sensing a presence. Not a metaphorical presence, not a feeling, a presence. You will hear voices, and I do not mean your inner monologue. I mean autonomous, alien voices saying things you did not choose. Words, fragments, full sentences, sometimes commands, sometimes nonsense, sometimes disturbingly coherent observations about your surroundings. This is a well-documented phenomenon called hypnagogic hallucination. It mimics the symptoms of schizophrenia, but it occurs in perfectly healthy people teetering on the edge between sleep and waking. Statistically, most people have experienced at least a mild version of this at some point in their lives. And this phenomenon, not aliens, not angels, not demons, is responsible for thousands of reported abduction contacts. But here is what is interesting. Humanity gazes at the cosmos with this childlike, almost desperate wonder, hoping to catch even a whisper of alien life. Scientists and science fiction writers have spent decades imagining how exotic, how bizarre, how unrecognizably strange such life might be. And what if I told you that right now, in this very moment, you are witnessing a form of life so exotic that you are not even ready to hear about it? Not merely not ready, so not ready that I have already directly mentioned it, and you were simply incapable of noticing. Let me explain. This video is built on two books. The first is Richard Dawkins' The Selfish Gene, published in 1976, one of the most influential science books of the 20th century. Dawkins is an evolutionary biologist at Oxford, and the book has sold well over 1 million copies worldwide, been translated into more than 25 languages, and fundamentally changed how an entire generation of scientists thinks about evolution. But the idea I want to focus on does not come from the main body of the book. It comes from one of the final chapters, almost an afterthought, where Dawkins introduces a concept that he himself did not fully develop. The second book is The Meme Machine by Susan Blackmore, published in 1999 with a foreword by Dawkins himself. Blackmore is a psychologist and writer who took that underdeveloped afterthought and turned it into something genuinely disturbing. I do not agree with everything in her book. Parts of it feel speculative in a way that makes me uncomfortable, and she herself admits that some of her conclusions are hard to test empirically. But the core argument, once you hear it, is the kind of idea that rearranges the furniture in your head and never puts it back. I want to start with something that sounds like a high school biology class, because that is where most people leave this topic, and that is precisely the problem. Darwin's theory of natural selection. You have heard about it. Survival of the fittest. Animals adapting to their environment. Finches with different beaks on different islands. Good. Fine. You got an A on the test. But here is what Dawkins argues, along with the philosopher Daniel Dennett in his book Darwin's Dangerous Idea. And pay close attention, because this reframing is everything. Natural selection is not a fact about biology. It is a mathematical law. It is as fundamental as gravity. It is not about finches or fossils or DNA. It is about any system, anywhere, in any medium that satisfies 3 conditions. 1. There must be a replicator, something that copies itself. 2. Those copies must occasionally vary. Mutations, errors, slight differences. 3. That variation must affect how well the copies survive and reproduce. That is it. If those 3 conditions are met, natural selection kicks in automatically. as inevitably as water flows downhill. Dawkins calls this universal Darwinism. Dennett calls it the universal acid, an idea so powerful it eats through every container you try to put it in. Now think about what this means. It means that if somewhere in a methane ocean on a moon of Saturn, a molecule stumbled into the trick of copying itself, natural selection would begin there, with no biology, no cells, no DNA. It means that if a pattern of ones and zeros inside a computer began replicating with variation and selection, the same blind mathematical ratchet would apply. No intelligence needed, no designer, no purpose. Just the cold, algorithmic consequence of replication plus variation plus competition. One self-copying molecule appeared on Earth roughly 4 billion years ago. That is all it took. One replicator. And from that single event, one molecule copying itself in warm water, came the entire green surface of this planet visible from space. Every tree, every insect, every whale, every bacterium inside your gut right now. All of it traces back to one moment when a molecule copied itself, and the copy was slightly different from the original. Replicators, once they appear, cling to existence with fatal tenacity. Remember that phrase. It will be important later. Now, let us talk about you. Specifically, let us talk about your brain. Because something about the human brain does not make evolutionary sense, and it has been bothering biologists for decades. Your brain is roughly 6 times larger than it should be for a mammal of your body size. 600% over budget. And this is not some benign excess. This organ is catastrophically expensive to run. At rest, your brain consumes about 20% of your total energy. In children, that number is closer to 60%. Think about that. A 5-year-old sitting perfectly still, doing nothing, is burning more than half of their calories just keeping their brain running. Evolution is ruthless about waste. It cut your tail because the marginal energy cost was not worth it. Tail, gone. Too expensive. Meanwhile, it hypertrophied the most energy-hungry organ in the animal kingdom by a factor of 6. This is like a company that fires the janitor to save money and then hires 600 new executives. It does not add up. Unless those executives are doing something spectacularly valuable. And here is where it gets strange. The part of the brain that evolution enlarged the most, the prefrontal cortex, the very thing that makes you, handles what neuroscientists rather vaguely describe as personality and will to live. Now, you would expect that if evolution went to these extraordinary lengths to build this structure, it must be absolutely critical to survival. Damage it, and the animal dies. Right? Wrong. In 1848, a railroad worker named Phineas Gage had a 3-foot iron rod blasted through his prefrontal cortex. Through it, in one side, out the other. He survived. He walked. He talked. His doctor noted that he was, and I am paraphrasing, no longer quite himself. He became irritable, profane, unreliable. But he lived for another 12 years. In the mid-20th century, tens of thousands of psychiatric patients received lobotomies, a procedure that intentionally severed connections in the prefrontal cortex. Many of them were discharged as healthy. Not well, certainly. Flattened, dulled, missing something essential, but alive and functional enough to send home. Now contrast this with any other animal and its crown adaptation. Blind an eagle, and it dies. Sever a giraffe's neck, and it is over instantly. Remove a cheetah's legs, and the animal cannot survive a week. But take the single organ that evolution spent millions of years and staggering caloric resources building in humans, the thing that supposedly justifies the most expensive brain in the animal kingdom, and the patient can go home. Something does not add up, unless the prefrontal cortex was not built for your survival at all, unless it was built for something else's survival. But here is where it gets really interesting. And to explain what I mean, I need to take a short detour through one of the most embarrassing mysteries in all of science. Language. You use it every day. You are processing it right now, effortlessly converting these vibrations in the air, or these marks on a screen, into meaning. It feels completely natural, and yet, from an evolutionary perspective, human language is profoundly, almost comically, mysterious. Consider, wolves hunt in coordinated packs without a single word of grammar. Bees communicate the precise location of food sources through a waggle dance. Distance, direction, quality, all encoded in movement. Vervet monkeys have 5 distinct alarm calls, each specifying a different predator: eagle, leopard, snake, baboon, unfamiliar human. 5 calls, no syntax, no grammar, no conjugation, and it works perfectly. So why did evolution sacrifice one of our most remarkable cognitive abilities, short-term memory, at which chimpanzees absolutely destroy us in laboratory tests? If you have not seen the Kyoto University experiments, where chimps memorize flashing number sequences in 200 milliseconds that no human can match, look them up. It is humbling. Why did evolution trade that away to build a fantastically expensive neural architecture for chatting? Think about the hardware involved. Human speech uses over 100 muscles coordinated in real time. The neural wiring required is so complex and so fragile that a stroke affecting a tiny region can eliminate speech entirely, while leaving everything else intact. Evolution invested an enormous amount in this system. And for what? Most human speech, if you honestly analyze it, is gossip, small talk, repetition, and social noise. It is not survival information. Wolves get by just fine without discussing their feelings about the weather. This problem was so intractable that in 1866, the Linguistic Society of Paris, the most prestigious linguistic body in the world at the time, officially banned all papers on the origin of language, declaring the question unanswerable. They were essentially saying, "Stop wasting our time. Nobody can figure this out." And as Steven Pinker, Terence Deacon, Robin Dunbar, and others have noted, either we explain what decisive advantage language gave to early hominids, an advantage so enormous that it justified the colossal neural cost, or we abandon hope for a Darwinian explanation of the human mind. That is not a small thing to abandon. All right, hold those 3 puzzles in your mind. The absurdly oversized brain, the prefrontal cortex that you can destroy without killing the organism, and language that costs a fortune and mostly produces gossip. 3 anomalies. No good explanation. Now let me introduce you to the explanation that connects all 3. About 2.5 million years ago, somewhere in East Africa, a primate did something unremarkable. It cracked a stone against another stone, and the fracture happened to produce a sharp edge. Maybe it used that edge to cut meat or scrape a hide. Maybe it did nothing with it at all. But another primate nearby, one that happened to have slightly denser mirror neurons, the brain cells that fire both when you perform an action and when you watch someone else perform it, that primate saw what happened. and it copied the action. Not instinctively, the way a baby bird opens its mouth when the parent returns. Not through trial and error, the way a rat learns a maze. This primate saw a complex, multi-step behavior and reproduced it. True imitation. This is extraordinarily rare in the animal kingdom. Most animals cannot do it at all. Among primates, only humans and, to a limited degree, a few great apes are capable of genuine imitation. And this changed everything. Because imitation is copying. And copying, remember the universal law, triggers Darwin's algorithm. For the first time in the 4 billion year history of life on Earth, a replicative process began inside a living organism. Not genetic replication. That had been happening since the beginning. A new kind of replication. Behavioral patterns, skills, sounds, habits. Things that could be copied from brain to brain, not through DNA, but through observation and imitation. Richard Dawkins, writing in the final chapter of The Selfish Gene in 1976, put it this way, and I will paraphrase because his phrasing deserves to be encountered in his own writing. A new kind of replicator has recently emerged on this very planet. It is still in its infancy, drifting clumsily in its primordial soup. But already it is evolving at a rate that leaves the old gene far behind. He needed a name for this new replicator. He wanted something that sounded like gene. He took the Greek word mimeme, meaning that which is imitated, and shortened it. He called it a meme. Now, I need to stop you right here, because I know exactly what just happened in your head. You heard the word meme and a little gate closed. You thought of internet memes, funny images, cat videos, distracted boyfriend. You mentally filed this under pop culture, and your guard went up. I need you to reopen that gate. Because what Dawkins described, and what Blackmore later expanded into something genuinely frightening, has almost nothing to do with internet memes. Or rather, internet memes are one tiny, trivial example of a phenomenon so vast that it may be responsible for everything that makes you human. A meme, in the original sense, is any unit of information that can be copied from one brain to another through imitation. A tune, a technique, a belief, a word, a recipe, a ritual, a fashion, a way of building a fire, a melody you cannot get out of your head, an argument structure, a religious practice. And here is the part most people miss. Memes are not a metaphor. They are not like life. According to Dawkins and Blackmore, they are literally alive, in the only sense that matters. They replicate. They vary. They compete for survival. They meet all three conditions of Darwin's universal law. They are subject to natural selection just as surely as any organism made of carbon and water. Let me make this concrete, because I can feel the abstraction pulling us away from reality. The Coca-Cola recipe. Born in an Atlanta pharmacy in 1886. A specific pattern of information. Ingredients, proportions, branding, taste associations. That copied itself from brain to brain. It mutated along the way. New campaigns, new slogans, slight reformulations. It competed with other beverage memes. And it won. Spectacularly. In under a century, this replicator spread its copies across billions of human brains worldwide. And here is the part that should stop you cold. In 1985, the Coca-Cola company did something perfectly rational. They ran massive blind taste tests, hundreds of thousands of participants, and confirmed that a new formula tasted better. Objectively, measurably better. So they changed the recipe. New Coke. The response was unlike anything a beverage company had ever seen. People protested in the streets. They hoarded the old formula. They wrote letters, not complaint letters, anguished letters. The company received death threats. A company psychologist who studied the response said that people talked about the change, and I am paraphrasing here, as if they were discussing the death of a family member. Think about what happened. A meme, a pattern of information living in billions of brains, was threatened with extinction. And it fought back. Not through its own agency. It has none. It fought back through its hosts, exactly like the rabies virus, which alters the brain of its host to prevent the host from drinking water, because the virus lives in saliva, and water would wash it away. The meme for original Coca-Cola literally prevented people from consuming a product that tasted better, because consuming the new product would have meant the death of the old replicator. If you find that unsettling, and this channel exists because enough curious people find things like this as unsettling as I do, so if this is your kind of rabbit hole, subscribing is probably a good move, because we're about to go considerably deeper. If you find that unsettling, you are not wrong to, because the Coca-Cola example is trivial. A soft drink. Let me show you what happens when you apply this same lens to things that actually matter. Memes created selection pressure on genes. This is not speculation. It is the central thesis of an entire field called gene culture coevolution, developed rigorously by Peter Richardson and Robert Boyd in their book Not by Genes Alone. The mechanism is straightforward. Once memes existed and could be transmitted through imitation, the individuals who were best at imitating, who had the neural hardware to copy complex behaviors most faithfully, survived and reproduced at higher rates. Natural selection favored bigger brains. But bigger brains could host more complex memes. And more complex memes created even stronger selection pressure for even bigger brains. A self-reinforcing cycle. A feedback loop between two replicators, each driving the other toward greater complexity at an accelerating rate. And suddenly, three mysteries dissolve at once. The absurdly oversized human brain? It was not enlarged for our benefit. It was enlarged because a second replicator was building itself a better habitat. The way a beaver builds a dam, not for the river's benefit, but for the beaver's. Our skulls are the dam. Memes are the beaver. Language? Not a tool that humans invented for survival. A system that memes evolved to improve their own transmission. Think about that for a moment. We did not develop language so we could communicate better. Language developed us, reshaped our brains, reorganized our neural architecture, so that memes could copy themselves more accurately and at greater speed. The gossip, the small talk, the endless, compulsive, seemingly pointless chatter, that is not a bug. That is the replicator replicating. And the prefrontal cortex, the part that houses your personality, your sense of self, your will to live, but that you can destroy without killing the organism? We will come back to that, because the implication there is the darkest one of all. But first, let me give you a few more examples, because I want you to feel how far this reaches. Have you ever had an earworm? A song stuck in your head for hours, maybe days, that you cannot dislodge no matter how hard you try? Of course you have. Everyone has. And notice how strange this is from a biological perspective. Your brain, the most complex object in the known universe, the product of billions of years of ruthless optimization, is being hijacked by a 3-note melody from a commercial you heard in a gas station. You did not choose to install this melody. You cannot choose to remove it. It replicates in your neural tissue against your explicit will. That is a meme in its purest form. A self-replicating pattern of information that uses your brain as its environment and your attention as its food supply. Now scale up. Why are sinners more romantically desirable than billionaires? This is an actual finding. Across cultures, musicians enjoy disproportionate sexual access compared to what their material resources would predict. From a genetic perspective, this makes no sense. A billionaire can provide vastly more resources for offspring. But from a mimetic perspective, it makes perfect sense. A musician is a high-fidelity meme transmitter. A brain that is attracted to musicians is a brain that will be exposed to, and will copy and transmit, more memes. The memes that promote attraction to musicians spread faster. Why do billions of primates spend hours every day absorbing repetitive sound patterns, music, that have absolutely nothing to do with food, shelter, play, or mating? No other animal does this. Whales sing, yes, but whale songs serve specific communicative functions. Humans listen to music while driving, while cooking, while exercising, while doing literally anything. We pump sound patterns into our ears for no survival reason whatsoever, unless the sound patterns are the point. Unless you are not listening to music for your benefit. Unless music is listening to you for its benefit, using your auditory system as a replication highway. Why do humans overimitate? This is one of the most robust findings in developmental psychology. Show a 3-year-old a puzzle box that contains a treat. Demonstrate a complex sequence of steps to open it, including several steps that are completely unnecessary, that demonstrably do nothing. The child will faithfully copy every step, including the useless ones. Chimpanzees do not do this. Chimps skip the pointless steps and go straight for the treat. Human children, and often adults, ritualistically reproduce the entire sequence. From a gene's perspective, this is wasteful. From a meme's perspective, it is perfect. High-fidelity copying, including copying things you do not understand, is exactly what a replicator needs from its host. And then there is perhaps the most extraordinary demographic mystery of the past decade. Genetic analysis has revealed that roughly 7,000 years ago, 95% of male genetic lineages disappeared. 95%. The effective breeding ratio crashed to 1 reproductively successful male for every 17 females. Female genetic diversity was unaffected. Something happened. Not a plague, not a natural disaster, because those would have affected both sexes equally, that caused the vast majority of men to fail to reproduce, while women continued reproducing normally. The leading hypothesis? Cultural selection. The rise of patrilineal clans, groups organized around shared cultural identity, shared beliefs, shared mimetic structures, created a system where clan warfare eliminated competing male lineages wholesale. Not gene against gene, meme against meme, using male bodies as weapons. This is where I started to feel genuinely uneasy reading Blackmore, because the examples stop being academic and start being personal. Let me show you religion through this lens. And I want to be careful here. I am not making a theological argument for or against any faith. I am making an observation about replication dynamics that I think is remarkable, regardless of what you believe. Notre Dame de Paris. Construction began in 1163 and was not completed until 1345, nearly 200 years. Cologne Cathedral took over 600 years to finish. 6 centuries of continuous human labor, resources, engineering, and devotion for a structure that serves zero genetic purpose. You cannot eat in a cathedral. You cannot mate in a cathedral. It does not keep the rain off any better than a simple roof. It does not protect against predators. An alien biologist studying Earth could explain a termite mound entirely through genetics. The termite's DNA contains instructions for building the mound. The mound protects the colony. The colony's genes propagate. Straightforward. But that same alien biologist could not explain Cologne Cathedral through human DNA alone. No gene codes for Gothic arches. No gene mandates that a community should devote 600 years of surplus labor to a stone structure with flying buttresses and stained glass. You need a second replicator to explain it. A mimetic structure, call it Christianity, call it the cathedral building tradition, call it religious devotion, that hijacked human motivation systems and redirected enormous amounts of energy away from genetic reproduction and toward its own propagation. And this is not some gentle, mutualistic symbiosis. Consider the Shakers, a Christian sect founded in the 18th century that explicitly forbids sexual reproduction. All members must be celibate. They can only grow through conversion, through mimetic transmission. The Shaker meme suppresses the most fundamental drive of its host organism in order to redirect that energy into spreading itself, and it has survived for over 300 years. In parasitology, there is a precise term for this, a parasitic castrator, an organism that suppresses its host's reproduction to channel the host's energy into the parasite's own life cycle. The barnacle Saculina does this to crabs. The parasitic worm Leucochloridium does this to snails. It invades the snail's eye stalks, makes them pulsate with bright colors to attract birds, so the bird eats the snail and the worm completes its life cycle in the bird's gut. The Shakers are, in purely mechanistic terms, a mimetic Leucochloridium. I am not being metaphorical. I am describing the same mathematical relationship between replicator and host. Now scale up again. The Cold War. 2 vast mimetic formations, capitalism and communism, each a complex of thousands of interlocking memes about economics, governance, human nature, and the good life, accumulated enough nuclear weapons to destroy each other approximately 100 times over. 100 times. Not once. 100 times. From a gene's perspective, this is crystallized insanity. From a meme's perspective, it is absolute success. 2 competing replicator complexes, each willing to destroy its entire host population rather than yield reproductive territory to the rival. And both sides were populated by intelligent, caring, individual humans who loved their children and wanted to live. It did not matter. The mimetic structures they inhabited had their own survival logic, and that logic overrode every genetic imperative. This is damn frightening if you think about it carefully. Now, I need to take you somewhere genuinely uncomfortable, and I want to give you fair warning. What comes next is the part of Blackmore's argument that I lost sleep over. Not because I am sure she is right. I am genuinely not sure. But because even the possibility rearranges something fundamental about how you think about yourself. Here is a thought experiment. Imagine raising a tiger cub in complete isolation. No other tigers, no jungle, no prey. Just a sterile room, food delivered through a slot. What do you get? You get a tiger. A perfectly functional, fully instinctual tiger. It will hunt if given the chance. It will know how to stalk, pounce, kill. Its behavior is written in its DNA, and isolation changes nothing essential about what it is. Now imagine raising a human infant the same way. Complete isolation from birth. No language, no other humans, no culture of any kind. What do you get? Not a human. Not in any sense that you or I would recognize. You get a biological organism that walks on all fours, does not speak, cannot reason abstractly, and shows no evidence of self-awareness. This is not hypothetical. There are documented cases. Dina Sanichar, discovered in 1867 in India, had been raised by wolves. He walked on all fours. He communicated in growls. He preferred raw meat. After years in human care, he learned to dress himself, and not much else. He never spoke a word. There are other cases. Kamala and Amala, Jeannie Wiley, Oksana Malaya. The pattern is consistent and devastating. Human children deprived of culture during critical developmental windows do not become wild humans. They become something else entirely. Something that lacks the very qualities we consider most essentially human: language, abstract thought, personality, a sense of self. And here is the question that Susan Blackmore asks. The question that keeps her and Daniel Dennett up at night. If you strip away the memes, who is left? Think about this carefully. What is your personality? It is your characteristic patterns of thought, behavior, and emotional reaction. Where did those patterns come from? Some from genes, yes, but the overwhelming majority, your values, your sense of humor, your political beliefs, your aesthetic preferences, your notion of who you are and what your life means, came from outside you. From culture, from other brains, from memes. Your sense of self, the feeling that there is a you in there, an essential core, a person behind the eyes, is not a biological given. It is a construction. And the building materials are memes. Wait, let me rephrase that, because I stated it too tamely. You are not a biological organism carrying some cultural accessories. You are not a genetic creature with a layer of learned behavior on top, like frosting on a cake. According to Blackmore, you are what happens when two replicators, genes and memes, interact inside the same body. Your genes built the hardware. Your memes wrote the software. And the software is not optional. Without it, the hardware does nothing recognizably human. The self, the I, the you that feels like the pilot of your body, is a memeplex. A complex of mutually reinforcing memes that creates the illusion of a unified, continuous identity. It is no more real, in a fundamental biological sense, than the Coca-Cola brand. It is a pattern, a very sophisticated, very persuasive, very persistent pattern, but a pattern nonetheless. I will give you a few seconds to let that sink in. Consider the implications. If this is even partially correct, then the memes do not just parasitize you in the way that a tapeworm parasitizes a dog, as an unwelcome intruder in an otherwise independent organism. The memes are you. Your personality, your inner voice, your desires and fears and ambitions and memories. Strip the memes away, and there is no one left to liberate. Blackmore uses an analogy that I find almost unbearably vivid. Think of the cordyceps fungus. The real one, not the one from the video game, although the game got the biology roughly right. Cordyceps infects an ant, hijacks its nervous system, and drives it to climb to a high point where the fungus can release its spores. The ant is still walking, still moving, but the ant is gone. There is no ant to save. The fungus is the ant now. If Blackmore is right, then asking, "Who am I without my memes?" is like asking, "Who is the ant without the cordyceps?" The answer is, there is no who. The question does not apply. The symbiosis is so total that you cannot separate host from parasite without destroying both. And this is why the prefrontal cortex makes sense. It is not a survival organ for the gene machine. It is the platform on which the second replicator runs. Damage it, and the genes keep ticking. The heart beats, the lungs breathe, the immune system functions. The biological organism survives. But the mimetic organism, the self, the person, the you, is devastated. Phineas Gage's body lived 12 more years. Phineas Gage did not. I promised you alien life. I promised you a form of life so exotic that you would not recognize it even when I pointed directly at it. Here it is. You are the alien. Not your body. Your body is a perfectly normal primate, evolved through perfectly normal genetic natural selection. The alien is the thing living inside your body. The thing that calls itself I. The mimetic organism that evolved through a completely separate replicative process, using your neurons as its habitat and your behavior as its reproductive mechanism. You are the only creature on this planet that was born from the symbiosis of two replicators. Every other organism, every bacterium, every tree, every whale, every ant, is a product of one replicator. DNA. You are a product of two. Genes and memes, intertwined so deeply that separating them would be like trying to separate the ocean from its salt. And considering that Neanderthals, who had even larger brains than us, went extinct, it is possible that housing two replicators in one body is such a volatile, unstable, thermodynamically improbable arrangement that only one species in the entire history of life has ever managed to stabilize it. Perhaps not for long. I want to end with something that has been circling in my mind since I finished Blackmore's book, and I cannot quite shake it. After we die, two things remain in the world: our genes and our means. As gene machines, we are forgotten with startling speed. Your genetic contribution halves with every generation. Half to your children, a quarter to your grandchildren, an eighth to your great-grandchildren. Within 3 or 4 generations, your specific DNA is diluted to statistical noise. Queen Elizabeth II was a direct, documented descendant of William the Conqueror, who lived nearly 1,000 years ago. And yet, geneticists have noted, she may not have shared a single one of his genes. A millennium of descent, and the genetic thread may have dissolved entirely. But then there is Jesus of Nazareth. He left no children. His genes exist in nobody alive. His genetic legacy is exactly 0. His memes are installed in the brains of roughly 2.5 billion people. The entire Western world counts its years from his birth. Wars have been fought. Empires have risen and fallen. Continents have been colonized. Calendars have been restructured. Moral systems have been built and dismantled. All in